Hello, everybody. This is the Canadian Journalist reporting on November 6th, 2023. The U.S. nuclear bomb, an updated U.S. nuclear bomb, could reach new targets, reported by Newsweek on November 3rd, 2023. The U.S. Department of Defense, DoD, last week announced a proposal to create a new nuclear bomb, saying that it would have expanded capabilities to hit certain targets. On October 27th, DoD said it plans to pursue the creation of a modern variant of the B-61 nuclear gravity bomb, designated the B-61 13, pending congressional authorization and appropriation. How ironic to name it number 13. Lucky 13, right? The B-61 13 would be deliverable by modern aircraft, strengthening deterrence of adversaries and assurance of allies and partners by providing the president Biden with additional options against certain harder and large area military targets, the announcement said. The Federation of American Scientists, FAS, reported that the bomb would be equipped with a guided tail kit, allowing for increased accuracy, as well as a limited Earth penetration capabilities. So, sidebar, what it sounds like, it's taking the exact same nuclear weapon, nothing different, putting some fins on it, and having a little better trajectory in terms of aiming it, because it can be steered with some fins on the same gravity bomb, which means it just drops down. It's not a missile, it's just dropped straight down with gravity with some fins. So it's nothing new, guys. This is the military-industrial complex where the superpowers actually don't have to invent anything new. They just want to use up the labor, use up the human labor for nothing that is good. It is not for production of better food. It is not for saving lives with health. It is not for improving quality of life. It is the perpetual military-industrial complex, perpetual war, where nobody has to make anything better. The superpowers just continue wasting of labor of humankind. It is, you got to read the Emmanuel Goldstein collectivism book in 1984. The FAS said that the B-61 13's relatively high yield and accuracy will likely enable the bomb to strike underground targets with yields equivalent to a surface burst weapon of more than 1 megaton. While the Pentagon didn't mention specific targets, the decision was made based on the 2022 Nuclear Posture Review. Authors of the report identified the need for the U.S. to advance its nuclear arsenal to deter China and Russia. During a speech on August 6, 2020, the 75th anniversary of the day the U.S. dropped the atomic bomb on Hiroshima, Japan, leading to the end of World War II, President Joe Biden spoke about the ongoing development of nuclear arms across the globe and said, "I will strengthen our alliances to keep the American people safe from nuclear and other global threats." Sidebar. How ironic. Let's talk about Hiroshima. Who was military targets bombed in Hiroshima? Or was it civilians? Was it an entire city of Hiroshima? Civilians. These people did not choose to go to war. These people did not instigate the political war. They did not create the military-industrial complex. These are all innocent civilians who were murdered in Hiroshima by a nuclear blast. Then the nuclear fallout. When you're talking about like a nuclear power plant melting down, the land, or a bomb, the land is forever screwed. The soil, you'd have to dig 100 meters and dig all the soil out because it's completely contaminated. The radiation factor is never ending. It doesn't just kill everybody, it actually kills the land and prevents it from being inhabitable for hundreds of years. And if he really cared about preventing a nuclear war, just, adding to the nuclear arsenal is not the way to do it. Because right now, everything they're doing with instigating Russia, moving, essentially back in all the last 10 years, moving all of the military bases on the border of Russia against their arms decree in World War II, against the convention that said you are not to put military bases one step closer to our border. And yet, guess what? The U.S. goes and sets up hundreds of military bases all over the world. They have thousands of them. They're all everywhere. This is proactive for war. And then they start the war in using Ukraine to attack Russia. And now the next war. Now we have the Holy War coming at us. It's never ending. And then the U.S. is like, oh, we're being attacked, or we have to prepare for being attacked by Hassan. It's absolutely ridiculous. It's warmongering for profit, for control. Everything they do is to suffocate the labor of human beings, to make our living standards worse, to make us more impoverished, to make us live off of, we are taxed and taxed and taxed. And inflation is the biggest tax we've ever had. Every year we've had 10%, over 10%, over 10% of prices rising because of inflation. Yet none of us are making more. None of us are making more. They are making more. Because they own all the properties that then gain up in value. They own the businesses that gain up in value because then they feed the need. They've created a need and feed it. Back to the article. He added, and I will work to bring us closer to a world without nuclear weapons so that the horrors of Hiroshima and Nagasaki are never repeated. Yeah, how ironic. Let's build more nuclear weapons to prevent nuclear war. Sure. It is a stalemate to death. In the announcement from the DoD, Assistant Secretary of Defense for Space Policy John Plum said, the B-6113 represents a reasonable step to manage the challenges of a highly dynamic security environment. While it provides with additional flexibility, production of the B-6113 will not increase the overall number of weapons in our nuclear stockpile. Well, I guess not including the nuclear ones, but the U.S. is sending all their old weapons over to Ukraine and Israel so they can build new ones and, again, use the labor force for the perpetual war motion. Nothing is solved. No cancers are fixed. People's livelihoods are not improved. Health is not improved. According to the FAS, the B-6113 is likely designed to be delivered by strategic bombers such as the future B-21 and until it is retired, possibly also the B-2. The B-6113 would have a much larger damage area than the bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, this latter on August 9th, 1945. Shortly after the announcement from DoD, members of the House Armed Service Committee issued a statement calling for further enhancements to the U.S. nuclear arsenal. While we welcome the step of creating a variant of the B-61, which will better allow the Air Force to reach hardened and deeply buried targets, it is only a modest step in the right direction. Representative Mike Rogers, chairman of the House Armed Service Committee, warmonger. Let's skip ahead. As the Strategic Posture Commission recently noted, China and Russia are in full-on arms race, and the U.S. is running in place. Dramatic transformation of our deterrent posture, not incremental or piecemeal changes, is required to address this threat. Now it is a good time to read another couple paragraphs from The Theory and Practice of Oligarchical Collectivism by Emmanuel Goldstein. Again, this is in the book 1984. It's a fictitious book in 1984 by George Orwell. Page 245. All members of the inner party believe in this coming conquest as an article of faith. It is to be achieved either by gradually acquiring more and more territory and so building up an overwhelming preponderance of power, or by the discovery of some new and unanswerable weapon. The search for new weapons continues unceasingly and is one of the very few remaining activities in which the inventive or speculative type of mind can find any outlet. In Oceania at the present day, science, in the old sense, has almost ceased to exist. In Newspeak, there is no word for science. The empirical method of thought on which all of the scientific achievements of the past were founded is opposed to the most fundamental principles of ignosoc, and even technologically, progress only happens when its products can in some way be used for the diminution of human liberty. In all of the useful arts, the world is either standing still or going backwards. The fields are cultivated with horse plows while books are written by machinery. But in matters of vital importance, meaning, in effect, war and police espionage, the empirical approach is still encouraged, or at least tolerated. The two aims of the party are to conquer the whole surface of the earth and to extinguish once and for all the possibility of independent thought. There are therefore two great problems which the party is concerned to solve. One is how to discover against his will what another human being is thinking, and the other is how to kill several 100 million people in a few seconds without giving warning beforehand. Insofar as scientific research still continues, this is the subject matter. The scientist of today is either a mixture of psychologist and inquisitor, studying with real ordinary minimus the meaning of facial expressions, gestures, and tones of voice, and testing the truth-producing effects of drugs, shock therapy, hypnosis, and physical torture. Or he is a chemist, psychist, or biologist concerning only with such branches of his special subject as are relevant to the taking of life. In the vast laboratories of the Ministry of Peace and in the experimental stations hiding in the Brazilian forest or in the Australian desert or on lost islands of the Antarctic, the teams of experts are indefatigable at work. Some are concerned simply with planning the logistics of future wars. Others devise larger and larger rocket bombs, more and more powerful explosives, and more impenetrable armor plating. Others search for new and deadlier gases, or for soluble poisons capable of being produced in such quantities as to destroy the vegetation of whole continents, or for breeds of disease germs immunized against all possible antibodies. Others strive to produce a vehicle that shall bore its way under the soil like a submarine, under the water, or an aeroplane as independent of its base as a sailing ship. Others explore even remoter possibilities, such as focusing the sun's rays through lenses suspended thousands of kilometers away in space, or producing artificial earthquakes and tidal waves by tapping the heat at the Earth's center. But none of these projects ever comes anywhere near realization, and none of these three superstates ever gains a significant lead on the other. What is more remarkable is that all three powers already possess, in the atomic bomb, a weapon far more powerful than any of their present researchers are likely to discover. Although the party, according to its habit, claims the invention for itself, atomic bombs first appeared as early as the 1940s and were first used on a large scale about 10 years later. At the time, some hundreds of bombs were dropped on industrial centers, chiefly in European Russia, Western Europe, and North America. The effect was to convince the ruling groups of all countries that a few more atomic bombs would mean the end of organized society, and hence of their own power. Therefore, although normal formal agreement was ever made or hinted at, no more bombs were dropped. All three powers merely continue to produce atomic bombs and store them up against the decisive opportunities which they all believe will come sooner or later. And meanwhile, the art of war has remained almost stationary for 30 or 40 years. Helicopters are more used than they were formerly. Bombing planes have been largely superseded by self-propelled projectiles, and the fragile movable battleship has given way to the almost unsinkable floating fortress. But otherwise, there has been little development. The tank, the submarine, the torpedo, the machine gun, even the rifle and the hand grenade are still in use. And in spite of the endless slaughters reported in the press and on the telescreens, and disparate battles of earlier wars in which hundreds of thousands and even millions of men were often killed in a few weeks, never have been repeated. None of the three superstates ever attempted any maneuver which involves the risk of serious defeat. And we're going to leave it there, guys. This is Ernie Racing News. This is the Canadian journalist reporting. Cheers.